The cursor moved before I touched the mouse. It didn't jump or flicker the way screens sometimes do when a system lags. It moved with intention, slow, precise, like someone guiding it carefully across the screen. I remember thinking I must have nudged the desk. Then it clicked. A window opened. I hadn't opened it. I sat there with my hand still resting on the mouse, not moving, watching the screen respond to something that wasn't me. For a few seconds, I didn't breathe. Because the part that unsettled me most wasn't that the computer was doing something on its own. It was that it wasn't acting randomly. It was logging in. At the time, I worked overnight operations support for a logistics company that handled pharmaceutical shipments. My role wasn't technical in the traditional sense, but I had access to the internal system, routing, inventory, temperature monitoring, shipment tracking. Enough access to see everything that mattered after hours, but not enough to change anything critical without authorization. The building itself was quiet after midnight. Not empty in a dramatic way, just inactive. The kind of quiet where every small sound stands out more than it should. The air system cycling. The distant hum of refrigeration units. The occasional mechanical click from somewhere in the ceiling. There were cameras everywhere, but the monitoring station sat in a small operations room at the back of the building. One desk. 2 monitors. A locked cabinet for the access panels. A chair that creaked if you leaned too far back. I had been working nights there for about 8 months. Long enough to stop noticing the silence. Long enough to trust the routine. That was the problem. The system required a login every time it idled for more than 5 minutes. Username. Password. Then a second authentication prompt that sent a temporary code to my phone. It was deliberately slow, deliberately secure. There was no shortcut. That's why what happened that night didn't make sense. The cursor moved to the username field. Typed. Not quickly, not hesitantly, just steadily, like someone who knew exactly what they were entering. I watched each character appear one at a time. I didn't recognize the username. It wasn't mine. That detail took a moment to register because my brain kept trying to force it into something familiar. But it wasn't. Different format. Different naming structure. Different everything. The cursor dropped to the password field. Dots appeared. Then the authentication window opened. I hadn't touched my phone. No code had been sent. The system paused there for a second, like it was waiting. Then the window closed. The login succeeded. I felt something shift inside me then, not panic, not yet, but the quiet understanding that I was no longer alone in the way I thought I was. Because someone had just accessed the system. From my terminal. While I was sitting there. I didn't move right away. I stayed in the chair, staring at the dashboard loading on the screen. Shipment logs. Temperature alerts. Standard interface. Nothing looked different. Nothing looked wrong. Except I wasn't the one logged in. I moved the mouse slightly. The cursor responded. For a moment, that grounded me. If I could control it, then whatever had just happened was over. That's what I told myself. I opened the user profile in the corner. The name displayed there was unfamiliar. No department listed. No role classification. Just a string of characters that didn't match any naming convention I'd seen in the system. I opened the activity log. It showed a login timestamp. Current. Active session. No previous entries. Like the account had only just begun existing. I told myself it had to be a remote access. Someone from IT. Someone running a test. Someone who hadn't realized I was actively using the station. That explanation held for maybe 30 seconds. Until the cursor moved again. This time, I wasn't touching anything. It slid slowly across the screen, hovered over the shipment panel, and opened it. I pulled my hand away from the mouse completely. The cursor continued. Scrolling. Clicking. Opening individual shipment records. Not randomly. Selecting specific entries. Reading them. That's how it felt. Not scanning. Not searching. Reading. I leaned back in my chair without realizing it, like creating distance might make what I was seeing easier to understand. It didn't. I opened the camera feed on the second monitor. Front lobby. Empty. Rear corridor. Empty. Loading dock. Empty. All the places someone would have to pass through to reach my room showed nothing. I checked the access logs. No badge entries since I arrived. No door activity. Nothing. The building still said I was alone. Behind me, the operations room door stood open. I hadn't closed it. I didn't remember deciding to leave it that way, but I hadn't thought about it either. Now I noticed. I stood up slowly and turned toward the hallway. Nothing moved. No sound except the same steady hum that had been there all night. When I turned back, the screen had changed again. The system had opened the temperature monitoring panel. One specific storage unit. Unit 3B. I stared at it. 3B wasn't scheduled for anything that night. No shipments in or out. No maintenance checks. No reason to be accessed. The temperature reading was normal. Everything about it was normal. Except it had been opened. And I hadn't done it. I sat back down. Not because I felt safe. Because standing made it worse. Standing made me feel like I was reacting to something I couldn't control. Sitting made it feel like I was observing. I watched the cursor hover over the temperature graph. It stayed there for a few seconds. Then moved away. Closed the panel. Opened the internal messaging system. That part made my stomach tighten. Because messaging required intent. You didn't open it unless you meant to communicate. The inbox was empty. No unread messages. No alerts. The cursor clicked, new message. The text field appeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then letters started appearing. Slowly. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just deliberate. I watched each one as it formed. Are you still there? No punctuation. No capitalization. Just that sentence. I didn't realize I had stopped breathing until the cursor blinked at the end of the line. Waiting. I didn't type anything. I didn't move. The cursor blinked again. Then the text disappeared. Deleted. The message window closed. The system returned to the main dashboard. Like nothing had happened. I checked the user profile again. Still the same unknown account. Still active. I opened the access permissions. It had full visibility. More than me. That didn't make sense. Even managers didn't have unrestricted access without flags in the system. This account had none. No hierarchy. No restrictions. Just presence. I reached for the keyboard slowly, like I might startle something if I moved too quickly. I typed a single line into the internal notes section. Who is this? I pressed enter. Nothing happened. No response. The cursor stayed where I left it. For a few seconds, I felt almost relieved. Like maybe whatever had been happening was over. Then the cursor moved again. It highlighted my text. Paused. Then deleted it. One clean motion. Like it had never been there. That was the moment something changed. Up until then, I had been trying to fit what I was seeing into something logical. Remote access. System glitch. Delayed input. Something technical. But nothing technical deletes a message before anyone else has a chance to read it. Nothing technical, feels aware. I looked at the reflection in the monitor for a second. Just a shape. My own outline in the dark glass. The room behind me. Empty. I turned around again anyway. The hallway was still empty. The door still open. The same quiet. But it didn't feel neutral anymore. It felt like space that had already been occupied. At 1:12 a.m. The system opened the camera feeds without me touching anything. All of them. Every camera in the building displayed across the monitors. Grid view. Lobby. Corridors. Storage. Loading dock. Stairwells. I watched as the cursor moved from one feed to another. Hovering. Pausing. Not randomly. Choosing. It stopped on the camera outside the operations room. The one that pointed down the hallway toward my door. The image showed exactly what I expected. An empty corridor. My door open. Light spilling out into the hall. No one there. The cursor stayed on that feed longer than the others. Then it zoomed in slightly. Not enough to distort the image. Just enough to focus. On the doorway. On the threshold. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Because the camera angle was fixed. It couldn't see inside the room. It could only see the hallway. And the doorway. And the space just beyond it. The cursor hovered there. Then the system opened the playback. 10 seconds earlier. The hallway was empty. 5 seconds earlier. Still empty. 3 seconds earlier. There was a change. Not a figure. Not movement in the way I would have recognized. Just a difference. Like the lighting shifted in a way that suggested something had interrupted it for a moment. Then it was gone. The cursor paused on that frame. Then returned to live view. The hallway looked normal again. Empty. Still. Waiting. I stood up. Slowly. I don't know why. Maybe because sitting felt like I was letting whatever this was happen. Standing felt like I might interrupt it. I walked to the doorway and looked out into the hall. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Just the same fluorescent light and empty space. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt the same. The building felt the same. But something inside me had shifted. Because now I wasn't just watching something happen on a screen. I was standing in the same space it had just focused on. I turned back toward the operations room. The monitors were visible from the hall. I could see the glow. The grid of camera feeds. The cursor moving again. Without me. I stepped back inside. The system closed the camera feeds. Returned to the main dashboard. Like it was done. At 1:26 a.m. the session logged out. Just like that. The screen returned to the login page. Username field empty. Password field empty. No trace of the account. No record in the activity log beyond the initial login. Like the entire session had been reduced to a single timestamp. I sat down slowly. My hands felt colder than they should have. I logged in again with my own credentials. Everything looked normal. No alerts. No anomalies. No messages. Unit 3B still showed normal temperature. I checked the system logs again. Only my login. Nothing else. No evidence. I stared at the screen for a long time. Trying to decide what part of that I could report. Because nothing I could say would sound like something that had actually happened. I finished the shift. I don't remember how. Just that time moved forward. The building stayed quiet. Nothing else happened. But the feeling didn't go away. The sense that something had been using the system in a way that didn't leave a trace. And that it had known I was there. Not just present. Watching. I didn't tell anyone. Not that day. Not the next. I told myself I needed to see if it happened again. That one incident wasn't enough. That I needed something more concrete. I didn't want to be the person who reported something they couldn't explain. So I waited. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same cursor movement. Same login. Same unknown account. This time, I didn't move at all. I just watched. The system opened the messaging window again. The text appeared slower this time. Like it was being written with more care. I see you. I stared at the words. Didn't respond. Didn't move. The cursor blinked. Then added another line. Don't turn around. I didn't. I couldn't. Because the worst part wasn't the message. It was that I had already been thinking about turning. I left that job the next week. No explanation. No notice. Just a resignation email that said I couldn't continue overnight work. They didn't push back. That told me more than anything else. Because if nothing strange had ever happened in that building before, they would have asked questions. They didn't. I still think about it sometimes. Not the screen. Not the cursor. Not even the messages. The part that stays with me is simpler. The system required 2-factor authentication. A code sent to a device. A second confirmation. A human step. And whatever logged in that night never needed it. Like it wasn't bypassing the system. Like it belonged inside it. I don't work nights anymore. I don't sit in front of empty rooms with glowing screens. I don't watch systems that are supposed to reflect reality. Because once you see something use those systems without you, you stop trusting what they show you. Sometimes, when I use my laptop late at night, I notice the cursor hesitate. Just for a second. Not enough to prove anything. Just enough to remember. And every time it happens, I move my hands away from the keyboard. Because I still don't know if the worst part was that something logged into my computer while I was sitting there. Or that it knew I was watching the entire time.